You are. How to outsmart a guy who's playing you begins with a brutal, liberating decision. You will no longer lie to yourself. You are. You will stop translating inconsistency into potential, stop mistaking charm for character, and stop rewarding confusion with your attention. Because the truth is this, you are. If someone is playing you, they are doing it with the permission you are unknowingly giving. Not because you are weak, but because you are hopeful. And hope, you are, when unguarded by discernment, becomes the doorway through which manipulation walks straight into your life. You must understand something fundamental. You are. People who play games rely on one resource, your emotional investment. They do not win by being better. They win by making you care more than they do. You are. The moment you care more, you lose leverage. You start explaining, chasing, clarifying, waiting, overthinking. Meanwhile, he stays relaxed, undefined, uncommitted. You are. Because he knows you will do the emotional labor for both of you. That is the trap. And the way out is not confrontation, not drama, not lectures. You are. The way out is composure and clarity. Watch actions, not words. Words are cheap currency for people who have no intention of paying with behavior. You are. If he says he likes you but disappears for days, believe the disappearance. If he says he is busy but is active everywhere else, believe the pattern. You are. If he says he wants something serious but avoids defining anything, believe the avoidance. You outsmart the game by refusing to participate in the illusion. You are. Reality is your ally, but only if you are brave enough to look at it without decorating it. Then you must do something even harder. You withdraw your attention. You are, not to punish him, not to make him chase, but because your attention is valuable and you will no longer spend it where there is no return. This is where power shifts. You are. The person who is less emotionally dependent has more control. When you stop texting first, stop checking his status, stop waiting for replies. You are. Stop rearranging your day for him. You are not playing a game. You are stepping out of one. You are showing, without saying a word, you are, that your life is not organized around his unpredictability. And here is the part most people resist. You must be willing to lose him. Truly willing. You are. Because as long as you are afraid to lose him, he has you. Your fear becomes his advantage. Your anxiety becomes his comfort. You are. But when you reach the point where you say calmly, if this fades, I will be fine, you become unplayable. That calm detachment is not coldness. It is self-respect. You are. It is the understanding that love should add peace, not confusion. You must also stop over-explaining yourself. You are. People who play games thrive when you start justifying your worth, your feelings, your expectations. Do not do that. Your standards do not need a defense lawyer. You are. If you want consistency, say it once. If you want clarity, say it once. If he cannot meet it, you do not argue, you observe. You are. And then you adjust your behavior accordingly. This quiet adjustment is far more powerful than emotional speeches. Silence, when backed by action, you are, is a language manipulators cannot control. There is a discipline required here. You must control your impulse to react. When he goes quiet, you do not panic. You are. When he sends mixed signals, you do not decode them. When he comes back with charm, you do not melt. You remain steady, predictable, grounded. You are. This steadiness unnerves someone who relies on emotional turbulence to keep you engaged. They expect you to react. They expect you to chase clarity. You are. When you do neither, the dynamic shifts in your favor. And most importantly, you must rebuild your focus on yourself. You are. Because the reason his behavior occupies so much of your mind is that you have allowed him to become the center of your emotional world. You are. Move that center back where it belongs, into your goals, your growth, your routines, your friends, your health, your ambitions. You are. A person who is deeply invested in their own life is extremely difficult to manipulate. There is simply no empty space for games to live in. Understand this clearly. You are. A man who is serious about you will remove confusion, not create it. He will move toward clarity, not away from it. He will make it easy for you to trust him. You are, not force you to guess. If you find yourself constantly analyzing, something is wrong. And the moment you admit that without excuses, you regain your strength. You are. Outsmarting him is not about tactics. It is about posture. The posture of someone who knows their value and behaves accordingly. You are. You do not need to teach him how to treat you. You show him by what you tolerate and what you walk away from. Your standards are not spoken loudly. You are. They are lived quietly. So you stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop hoping for potential. You start observing reality. You start protecting your attention. You are. You start standing still while he reveals himself through his actions. And in that stillness, you will see everything clearly. You are. Because the ultimate way to outsmart a man who is playing you is this: you become a person who cannot be played. See reality without romance, judge actions, not words. You are. This is where clarity begins, and clarity is the weapon you did not know you had. Most people do not get hurt because they are foolish. You are. They get hurt because they are imaginative. They take fragments of behavior and build entire stories around them. You are. They take occasional kindness and inflate it into commitment. They take charming language and mistake it for honest intention. And in doing so, you are. They step away from reality and walk directly into disappointment. If you want strength, if you want peace, if you want control over your emotional life, you are. You must learn to see what is in front of you without decorating it with what you wish were there. You are. A person's actions are the most honest confession they will ever make. Words are flexible, adjustable, negotiable. Actions are not. Actions require time, effort. You are. Sacrifice, priority. When someone consistently chooses not to show up, that is a statement. When someone repeatedly delays clarity, that is a statement. You are. When someone makes promises they never convert into behavior, that is a statement. You do not need to interrogate, decode, or interpret. You simply observe. You are. Observation without emotional interference is one of the highest forms of intelligence you can develop in relationships. But to do this, you must confront a difficult truth about yourself. You enjoy the fantasy. The fantasy is comforting because it allows you to feel special, hopeful, and emotionally stimulated. It gives you something to think about, something to wait for, something to believe in. Reality, on the other hand, can feel harsh, minimal, unromantic. Reality might tell you that someone is inconsistent, emotionally unavailable, or simply not invested, and that is uncomfortable. You are. So you choose the story over the facts. You choose the illusion over the evidence. And that choice is what keeps you trapped. You are. Strength is the decision to prefer truth over comfort. It is the willingness to say, this is what is happening, instead of you are. This is what I hope is happening. This shift is not cold, it is mature. It is the difference between reacting emotionally and responding intelligently. You are. When you begin judging behavior instead of listening to promises, you stop being easily influenced. You stop being easily confused. You stop being easily manipulated. You are. Notice how liberating this is. You no longer have to analyze texts, tones, emojis, timing, or hidden meanings. You are. You no longer have to replay conversations in your head searching for clues. You do not have to ask friends for interpretations. You do not have to build theories. You are. You simply look at the pattern. Does this person show up consistently? Do they invest time? Do they create clarity? Do they follow through? If the answer is no, you are. The conclusion is already made for you. No drama required. This way of seeing requires discipline because emotions will try to pull you back into storytelling. You are. You will want to excuse behavior. You will want to justify absence. You will want to interpret silence as depth, delay as complexity, and inconsistency as mystery. You are. Resist that impulse. Mystery is often just lack of interest wearing a poetic disguise. Depth is often just poor communication dressed as emotional complexity. You are. And inconsistency is rarely romantic. It is usually indifference. When you train yourself to judge actions, you become calm. Calm because you are no longer guessing. You are. Calm because you are no longer hoping. Calm because you are no longer negotiating with reality. You are simply accepting it. And acceptance gives you power. You are. You cannot change how someone behaves, but you can change how you respond once you see it clearly. This clarity also protects your self-respect. You are. Because when you stop believing words that are not supported by behavior, you stop lowering your standards to keep someone around. You stop waiting endlessly. You are. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop accepting half effort as potential. You begin to understand that genuine interest does not require interpretation. It is obvious. You are. It is consistent. It is visible. There is also a deeper benefit. When you live this way, you start applying the same principle to yourself. You are. You stop judging yourself by intentions and start judging yourself by actions. You stop saying, I meant well, and start asking, you are. What did I actually do? This creates integrity. It aligns your inner world with your outer behavior. You are. And a person who lives with integrity cannot be easily shaken by others who do not. Understand that seeing reality without romance does not make you cynical. You are. It makes you precise. It allows you to give your emotional energy to people who earn it through their behavior, not those who request it through their words. You are. It allows you to invest wisely instead of impulsively. It allows you to protect your time, your attention, and your heart. You begin to realize something powerful. You are. Confusion is a signal. If you are confused about where you stand with someone, the answer is already there. Clarity never produces confusion. You are. Consistency never produces anxiety. Genuine care never produces constant doubt. So when confusion appears, you do not fight it. You read it as information. You are. This is the discipline of emotional intelligence. This is the posture of someone who refuses to be misled by charm. You become grounded in evidence. You are. You become steady in judgment. You become difficult to deceive because you are no longer participating in the fantasy that allows deception to thrive. You are. And from this place, you make better decisions, quieter decisions, stronger decisions. You walk away sooner. You invest slower. You trust carefully. You observe patiently. You move forward only when behavior proves it is safe to do so. See reality without romance. Judge actions, not words. You are. If you can live by this single principle, you will remove a vast amount of unnecessary pain from your life. You will stop chasing illusions. You are. You will stop rewarding inconsistency. And you will start living with a calm, powerful clarity that protects both your heart and your dignity. Reclaim your attention. You are. Attention is power. Withdraw it from games. The moment you understand this, the entire dynamic changes. Attention is the most valuable currency you possess. You are. And most people spend it carelessly on those who have done nothing to earn it. You check your phone. You reread messages. You analyze delays. You imagine scenarios. You are. You wait, you hope. And without realizing it, you have handed someone the center of your mental world while they casually occupy a corner of theirs. You are. This is how games work. They do not trap you with force. They trap you with your own focus. Your attention feeds the situation. You are. Every minute you spend thinking about what he meant, why he hasn't replied, what he might be feeling, you are. You are investing emotional energy into a person who is not investing the same in you. That imbalance is the root of your frustration. Not what he is doing, you are, but what you are giving. And until you see that clearly, you will remain stuck in the cycle of waiting, wondering and worrying. You are. Attention is power because whatever you focus on grows in importance. If you focus on his inconsistency, it becomes your primary emotional concern. You are. If you focus on your own growth, your goals, your life, those become the center of gravity instead. The problem is not that he is playing games. You are. The problem is that you are still watching the game. You are still emotionally present in a place where you are not being respected. You are. And the solution is not confrontation. The solution is withdrawal. Withdrawal does not mean anger. It does not mean dramatic silence. You are. It does not mean pretending not to care. It means genuinely redirecting your mind back to where it belongs. When you stop checking his status, you are. Stop monitoring his activity. Stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You are doing something radical. You are. You are reclaiming mental territory that was slowly taken from you. Most people believe power in relationships comes from getting attention. That is backwards. You are. Real power comes from where you choose to place your attention. You are. The person who can calmly remove their focus from a situation without emotional collapse is the person who cannot be manipulated. Because games require participation. You are. They require your curiosity. They require your reaction. They require your engagement. When you provide none of that, the game collapses on its own. You are. This requires discipline. You will feel the urge to check your phone. You will feel the urge to reach out. You will feel the urge to seek reassurance. You are. But every time you resist that impulse, you strengthen yourself. You are training your mind to stop seeking validation from someone who is not offering stability. You are. You are teaching yourself that your peace is more important than temporary emotional stimulation, and something remarkable happens when you do this. You are. Your anxiety decreases, your clarity increases, your self-respect quietly returns, because you are no longer behaving like someone waiting to be chosen. You are. You are behaving like someone already complete. Your day is no longer interrupted by thoughts of him. Your mood is no longer determined by his responsiveness. You are. You become emotionally independent. This is deeply unsettling to someone who plays games. They expect you to chase. They expect you to notice. You are. They expect you to ask questions. They expect you to react. When you do none of that, they feel the shift immediately. Not because you said anything, you are, but because your attention is no longer available to them. And attention, once withdrawn, is very difficult to regain. You are. Understand that you do not owe constant mental space to anyone who has not proven their place in your life. You are. You do not owe your thoughts to someone who offers you inconsistency. Your mind is valuable territory. Guard it. Protect it. You are. Be selective about who is allowed to occupy it. You must also redirect this reclaimed attention somewhere meaningful. Into your work, your health, your learning. You are. Your friendships, your passions. Because attention cannot simply be removed. It must be reassigned. When you invest it into yourself, you become stronger, more focused, you are more grounded. And ironically, you become far more attractive because you are no longer emotionally available for nonsense. You are. People who are deeply engaged in their own lives are very difficult to play with. They do not have time for confusion. They do not have space for drama. You are. They do not sit around decoding behavior. They live, and they allow others to either keep up or fall behind. This is not a tactic to make him chase you. You are. That mindset is still part of the game. This is a decision to stop playing entirely. Whether he notices or not becomes irrelevant. You are. Whether he comes back or not becomes secondary. What matters is that you are no longer losing hours of your life to someone who has not earned that privilege. You are. And when you truly reach this state, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling desperate for clarity. You stop needing answers. You are. You stop feeling pulled towards someone who is inconsistent because you understand at a deep level that your peace is worth more than your curiosity. You are. Reclaim your attention. Withdraw it from games. Place it back into your own life with intention and discipline. This is how you restore balance. You are. This is how you regain control. This is how you become someone who cannot be emotionally toyed with. You are. Because the person who controls their attention controls their emotional world. And the moment you take that control back, you are no longer part of anyone's game. You are. Set standards that cost you something to keep. If your standards require no sacrifice, they are not standards. They are preferences dressed in polite language. You are. Real standards demand that you walk away from what you want when it disrespects what you value. And that is where most people fail. You are. They announce their expectations loudly, but when the moment arrives to enforce them, they shrink. They negotiate, they rationalize, they compromise. You are. And in that compromise, they teach others that their words carry no weight. A standard only becomes real when you are willing to lose something for it. Lose attention. You are. Lose affection. Lose the possibility of a relationship. Lose comfort. That loss is the price of self-respect. And until you are willing to pay it, you are. You will continue accepting situations that quietly erode your dignity. You say you want consistency, but you keep entertaining inconsistency. You are. You say you value honesty, but you tolerate half-truths. You say you deserve clarity, but you remain in confusion. This is not because you are unaware. You are. It is because enforcing standards is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront the fear of being alone, the fear of missing out, the fear of letting go of potential. You are. And so you trade your standards for temporary emotional security. But understand this: every time you lower a standard to keep someone, you lower your value in your own eyes. You feel it. A quiet disappointment in yourself, a subtle loss of confidence, because deep down you are. You know you accepted less than you deserve. This internal conflict is far more damaging than the loss you were trying to avoid. Strong people do something different. You are. They decide in advance what they will and will not tolerate. And when the moment comes, they act without drama. No speeches, no emotional debates, just action. You are. If someone disrespects their time, they withdraw access. If someone avoids clarity, they step back. If someone repeatedly disappoints, they stop investing. Calmly, you are. Firmly, without hostility. This is what makes standards powerful. They are not emotional reactions. They are decided boundaries. You are. And boundaries only work when they are enforced consistently. The moment you make an exception because you like someone, the boundary collapses. And once it collapses, you are. It becomes nearly impossible to rebuild without losing credibility. You must accept that having standards will cost you opportunities. You are. Some people will walk away because you are not easy to manipulate. Some will disappear because you do not tolerate ambiguity. You are. Some will call you difficult because you require respect. Let them go. Their departure is not a loss. It is proof that your standards are working. You are. Standards filter your life. They remove people who are not aligned with you before they can do serious damage. You are. But if you keep adjusting the filter to let everyone through, you cannot complain about the quality of what enters your life. You are. There is also a discipline in silence here. You do not need to announce your standards repeatedly. You show them through behavior. You are. When someone crosses a line and you calmly reduce your availability, they understand. When someone fails to meet expectations and you stop investing, they understand. You are. Action communicates far more clearly than explanation. And here is the difficult truth. Keeping your standards will sometimes feel lonely. You are. Because it is easier to bend than to stand firm. It is easier to accept half effort than to wait for full effort. It is easier to stay than to leave. You are. But the loneliness of self-respect is temporary. The frustration of self-betrayal is constant. You must become comfortable with walking away early. You are. Not after months of hoping. Not after endless chances. Early. The first time patterns reveal themselves, this is not impatience, it is intelligence. You are. Patterns do not change because you are patient. They change because the person wants to change. And if they want it to, you are. You would see it in their actions without needing to request it repeatedly. When you live by standards that cost you something, you become very difficult to mistreat. You are. Because people quickly realize that access to you is conditional upon respect. They understand that your presence in their life is not guaranteed. You are. And that understanding creates a natural level of seriousness in how they treat you. Most importantly, you begin to trust yourself. You are. You no longer feel trapped in situations you dislike because you know you have the courage to leave. That trust in yourself is powerful. It creates inner stability. You are. You stop fearing emotional loss because you know you will protect yourself when necessary. Set standards that cost you something to keep. Let them require courage. You are. Let them require sacrifice. Let them demand that you walk away when your values are threatened. You are. Because the price of keeping your standards is always smaller than the price of abandoning them. And when you reach the point where you can calmly say, you are. This does not meet my standard, so I will step back. Without anger or desperation, you have reached a level of emotional strength that very few people ever develop. You are. You are no longer negotiating your worth. You are living it. Act with calm dignity, not emotional reactivity. This is the line that separates strength from impulse. You are. Maturity from chaos, and self-respect from emotional surrender. Most people do not lose control because the situation is unbearable. You are. They lose control because their emotions move faster than their judgment. A delayed reply, a careless comment, a moment of disrespect, and suddenly the mind races. You are. The heart pounds and words are spoken that cannot be taken back. In that moment, you hand over your power, not because someone took it, you are, but because you dropped it in reaction. Calm dignity is not weakness. It is restraint with awareness. You are. It is the ability to feel everything and still choose what you do next with precision. It is the discipline of pausing before you respond, observing before you speak. You are, and thinking before you act. Emotional reactivity, on the other hand, it is loud, it is impulsive. You are. And it almost always works against your long-term interest. People who play games, who create confusion, who behave inconsistently, rely on your reaction. You are. They expect it. They know that if they trigger you, you will reveal your emotions, your fears, your frustrations. And once you reveal those, you are. They gain insight into how to control the situation. Your emotional outburst becomes information they can use. Your calm, however, gives them nothing to work with. You are. When you act with dignity, you become unreadable in the best possible way. You do not chase explanations. You do not demand immediate clarity. You are. You do not argue to prove a point. You simply observe, process, and decide your next move without emotional noise. This unsettles anyone who expects drama. You are. Because drama is easy to manage. Calm is not. Understand this clearly. Reacting emotionally feels powerful in the moment, but it weakens you in the long run. You are. You may feel relief after sending that long message, after confronting someone angrily, after expressing everything at once. But afterward comes regret, overthinking. You are, and a sense that you revealed too much. Dignity avoids this entirely. Dignity keeps you composed, measured, and in control of what you reveal. This requires practice. You are. Your first instinct will always be emotional. That is human. But strength is found in the second instinct, the one you choose deliberately. You are. The pause between feeling and responding is where your power lies. In that pause, you ask yourself, will this reaction help me? You are, or harm me? Most emotional reactions fail that test. Calm dignity also protects your self-image. When you behave with restraint, you are. You walk away from situations feeling proud of how you handled them. You do not replay conversations wishing you had said less. You are. You do not feel embarrassed by your own behavior. You maintain an inner sense of control, and that control becomes part of your confidence. You are. There is also a strategic advantage here. When you remain calm, you see more clearly. Emotional intensity clouds judgment. You are. It makes you focus on proving a point instead of understanding the situation. Calm allows you to notice patterns, to recognize intentions. You are, and to make decisions based on observation rather than impulse. You must also learn to become comfortable with silence. You are. Not every situation requires an immediate response. Not every comment deserves a reply. Not every provocation needs engagement. Silence, when chosen intentionally, you are, is a form of strength. It communicates that you are not easily pulled into emotional turbulence. This does not mean you suppress your feelings. You are. It means you process them privately before expressing them publicly. You allow yourself to feel hurt, disappointed, or angry. You are, but you do not let those emotions dictate your behavior. You respond from clarity, not from intensity. You are. And something powerful happens when you consistently act this way. People begin to treat you differently. They sense that you are not easily shaken. You are. They realize that emotional tactics will not work on you. They understand that if they want your engagement, they must approach you with respect and sincerity. You are. Most importantly, you begin to trust yourself under pressure. You no longer fear difficult conversations because you know you will handle them with composure. You are. You no longer fear conflict because you know you will not lose control. This self-trust is the foundation of emotional strength. Act with calm dignity. You are. Not emotional reactivity. Let your behavior be slower than your emotions. Let your responses be quieter than your impulses. You are. Let your presence be steadier than the chaos around you. You are. Because the person who remains composed while others lose control is the person who holds the real power in any situation.